The hum of engines, the vast expanse of the sky, and the unwavering dedication of a group of women who, in their own quiet way, helped shape the very destiny of nations. Their stories are not often found in the grand pronouncements of war, but rather in the meticulous logbooks, the whispered stories of camaraderie, and the silent, steady hands that guided formidable aircraft across American skies during one of the most tumultuous periods in human history. This is the story of the Women Air Force Service Pilots, the WASPs, a chapter often overlooked, yet undeniably crucial, in the vast tapestry of World War II. To truly understand how these remarkable women found their place in the war effort, we must first examine the circumstances that led to their very creation, a tale born of necessity and forged in the crucible of a world at war. The story of the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs, is intrinsically linked to the immense demands placed upon the United States military during the Second World War. As the nation mobilized its vast resources for global conflict, every available man, and indeed every conceivable talent, was needed on the front lines or in critical industrial production. The air forces, in particular, were undergoing an unprecedented expansion. The need for pilots to ferry aircraft, to tow targets for gunnery practice, to transport personnel and vital equipment, and to conduct aerial surveys was overwhelming. The United States Army Air Forces, the nascent entity that would evolve into the U.S. Air Force, found itself stretched incredibly thin. The sheer volume of aircraft being manufactured was staggering, and each one needed to be moved from the factories to training bases, and then often across the continent to ports of embarkation. This logistical challenge was compounded by the fact that experienced male pilots, many of whom had civilian flying experience, were increasingly being drawn into combat roles overseas. The question arose, therefore, who would perform these essential non-combat flying duties? It was in this context that the idea of utilizing women pilots began to gain traction. The concept was not entirely novel. During World War I, a similar organization called the Women's Overseas Air Service, or OAS, had been proposed, though it never fully materialized. However, the pressing needs of World War II provided a more fertile ground for such an endeavor. The driving force behind the establishment of the WASPs was Jacqueline Cochran, a name that would become synonymous with aviation and perseverance. Cochran was a pioneering aviator herself, a wealthy businesswoman, and a true visionary. She understood the capabilities of women in aviation and was convinced that they could fill the void left by male pilots in non-combat roles. She had already distinguished herself in various aviation feats, including winning the prestigious Bendix Trophy race multiple times and setting numerous speed and altitude records. Her conviction was that women could fly these aircraft just as competently as men. In 1942, with the war escalating, Cochran approached General Henry H. Arnold, the commanding general of the U.S. Army Air Forces. Arnold, often referred to as Hap Arnold, was a pragmatic and forward-thinking leader who was acutely aware of the personnel shortages plaguing his command. He was initially hesitant, perhaps due to prevailing societal attitudes about women's roles, but Cochran's persuasive arguments and her demonstrable confidence in her proposal eventually won him over. The agreement was struck. Women pilots would be brought into service, not as military personnel with full benefits and ranks, but as civilians working for the Army. This distinction, while initially a pragmatic compromise, would have significant long-term implications for the WASPs. The formal establishment of the Women Air Force Service Pilots occurred on August 5, 1943. This date marked the consolidation of two existing women's flying groups, the Women's Flying Training Detachment, WFTD, led by Cochran, and the Women's Ferrying Service, WFS. Together, they became the WASPs, a unified organization under the command of the Army Air Forces. The intention was clear: to free up male pilots for combat and to keep the wheels of the air war turning. The WASPs were tasked with a wide array of aviation duties that were deemed crucial but not directly related to combat engagement. The recruitment process was rigorous. Thousands of women applied, drawn by the patriotism of wartime service, the allure of flying, and the opportunity to contribute to the war effort in a tangible way. The requirements were demanding. Applicants had to be American citizens between the ages of 21 and 35. They needed to have a pilot's license and a minimum of 200 hours of logged flying time. This was no small feat for women in the 1940s, as aviation was still a predominantly male domain, and opportunities for women to accumulate such flight hours were limited. Many women had to scrape together funds, borrow planes, or find less conventional ways to build their flight experience. The applicants also had to pass a stringent physical examination, a mental aptitude test, and a background check. The competition was fierce, with only a small fraction of those who applied ultimately being accepted. Those who were accepted embarked on a training program that was as demanding as any undertaken by their male counterparts. The primary training base for the WASPs was Avenger Field, located in Sweetwater, Texas. This was a unique environment, a dedicated airfield for women pilots, where they would undergo intensive instruction in everything from primary flight maneuvers to advanced aircraft handling. The training curriculum was designed to prepare them for the diverse missions they would undertake. It included instrument flying, formation flying, navigation, simulated combat maneuvers, and the operation of various types of aircraft. The aircraft flown by the WASPs were a testament to the era's aviation technology. They piloted everything from small training planes like the Stearman biplane and the Vultee BT-13 Valiant, to larger and more complex aircraft, such as the North American AT-6 Texan, the Beechcraft AT-11 Kansan, and even the formidable Boeing B-26 Marauder and the consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers. Yes, the WASPs flew bombers. While they were not permitted to carry bombs or engage in combat missions, they were tasked with ferrying these massive machines from factories to military bases, a duty that required immense skill and responsibility. They also flew advanced trainers, vital for preparing male pilots for combat. The training at Avenger Field was not just about mastering the mechanics of flight, it was also about building a spirit of camaraderie and resilience. The women lived together, trained together, and supported each other through the intense pressures of wartime service. They formed deep bonds, forged in shared experiences and a common purpose. The instructors, many of whom were former Army Air Forces pilots, were initially skeptical of the women's abilities. However, the WASPs quickly proved their mettle, demonstrating exceptional skill, discipline, and dedication. They learned to handle aircraft in challenging weather conditions, to navigate vast distances, and to perform complex maneuvers with precision. One of the most critical roles the WASP filled was that of target towing. In this capacity, they would fly aircraft equipped with a large sleeve target towed behind them. Fighter pilots in training would then practice their gunnery skills by attempting to shoot down the target. This was a dangerous duty, as it involved flying in close proximity to other aircraft, often at low altitudes, and exposed them to live ammunition. The risk of friendly fire was ever present, and tragic accidents did occur. The WASPs demonstrated incredible bravery and professionalism in carrying out this vital, albeit hazardous, task. They understood that their success in towing targets directly contributed to the combat readiness of fighter pilots who would soon be facing enemy aircraft in real combat situations. Another significant contribution was aircraft ferrying. The WASPs were responsible for delivering new aircraft from factories to air bases across the country. This included a vast range of planes, from trainers to bombers. They had to navigate diverse terrains, contend with varying weather conditions, and often fly aircraft they had never flown before. This required an incredible adaptability and a deep understanding of aircraft systems. They became adept at troubleshooting minor mechanical issues mid-flight and ensuring that each aircraft reached its destination safely. Imagine the scene. A young woman, often in her early 20s, clad in her flight uniform, taking the controls of a powerful bomber, guiding it through the skies, knowing that its ultimate purpose was to defend freedom on distant battlefields. Beyond ferrying and target towing, WASPs also performed crucial administrative and transport duties. They flew personnel, medical supplies, and essential equipment between bases. They conducted aerial photographic reconnaissance missions, gathering vital intelligence. They also flew experimental aircraft and tested new equipment, contributing to the ongoing development of aviation technology. Each mission, no matter how seemingly mundane, was a critical piece of the larger war effort. The absence of a single WASP pilot on a ferrying duty could mean a delay in a bomber reaching its squadron, or a trainer not being available for student pilots. Their collective efforts ensured the smooth functioning of the Army Air Force's logistical network. The uniforms of the WASPs were distinctive and practical. They wore tailored flight suits, often in a practical olive drab, designed for comfort and functionality in the cockpit. They were also issued flight jackets, helmets, and goggles. While they were civilian employees, their uniforms clearly marked them as members of the war effort, a symbol of their dedication and sacrifice. However, the civilian status also meant they did not receive the same benefits as male military personnel. They did not earn military pay, were not eligible for the GI Bill, and their service was not recognized as military service. This was a source of ongoing frustration and a point of contention that would surface much later. The war continued, and the WASPs became an indispensable part of the Army Air Forces. They accumulated millions of flight hours, ferried tens of thousands of aircraft, and towed countless targets. They proved, unequivocally, that women possessed the skill, the courage, and the dedication to perform complex aviation duties with excellence. They served with distinction in every theater of operations within the continental United States, their contributions often silent but always vital. As the war drew closer to its end, the need for the WASPs began to diminish. With the Allied victory becoming increasingly probable, the Army Air Forces began to demobilize and reorganize. The rationale for maintaining the WASP, which had been born of urgent wartime necessity, started to fade. In a decision that would be viewed with profound regret and injustice by many, the WASPs were disbanded in December 1944. Even before the war officially ended, the announcement came as a shock to many of the women who had dedicated themselves to the cause. The disbandment was met with disappointment and a sense of being overlooked. The WASPs had served their country with honor, flying some of the most advanced aircraft of the era, often in dangerous conditions. Yet their service was not recognized as military service. They were sent home with little fanfare, their contributions largely unacknowledged. They returned to civilian life, many facing the challenge of reintegrating into a society that had, for the most part, expected them to return to traditional domestic roles. The vast majority of WASPs had been pilots before the war, and many aspired to continue their aviation careers. However, the existing aviation industry was still largely male-dominated, and the doors that had opened during the war began to close once more. The legacy of the WASPs was one of quiet heroism and immense contribution that went largely unrecognized for decades. For many years, their story remained in the shadows, overshadowed by the more dramatic narratives of combat and the celebrated achievements of male aviators. The lack of official military recognition meant that their service was not included in official war histories, and they did not receive the same GI Bill benefits or veteran status that were afforded to their male counterparts. This omission was not an oversight, it was a deliberate consequence of their civilian status within a military framework. However, the spirit of the WASPs and their determination to see their contributions acknowledged persisted. In the decades following the war, many WASPs continued to advocate for recognition. They organized reunions, shared their stories, and lobbied Congress. Their persistent efforts began to chip away at the wall of indifference. The passage of time, coupled with the growing awareness of the contributions of women in various aspects of the war effort, created a more receptive environment. A significant turning point came in 1977, when the WASPs finally received official military recognition. Congress passed legislation granting them the status of veterans of World War II. This was a monumental victory, a long overdue acknowledgement of their service and sacrifice. It meant that they were now officially recognized as having served their country in uniform, even if their service had been civilian during the war. This recognition opened the door for them to receive certain benefits and, more importantly, to have their story told and preserved. The 1977 recognition was followed by further acknowledgements. In 2009, the WASPs were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian award bestowed by the United States Congress. This was a profound honor, symbolizing the nation's gratitude for their dedication and the immense impact of their service. The ceremony was attended by many surviving WASPs, their families, and dignitaries, finally bringing the stories of these remarkable women into the national spotlight. The story of the WASPs is a testament to the fact that history is not always made in grand, sweeping gestures. It is often built through the quiet, consistent efforts of individuals who rise to meet the challenges of their time. The WASPs were not frontline combat pilots, and their missions were not filled with the dramatic dogfights and daring raids that often capture the public imagination. Instead, their contributions were in the meticulous navigation of airways, the steady hands on the controls of crucial aircraft, and the unwavering commitment to keeping the war effort moving forward. Their training was rigorous and comprehensive. At Avenger Field, they learned to fly a variety of aircraft, from the nimble training planes to the large, powerful bombers. They mastered navigation, instrument flying, and formation flying. They underwent simulators for gunnery practice and learned to handle aircraft in adverse weather conditions. The curriculum was designed to prepare them for the diverse and demanding roles they would undertake. For instance, when training to fly the B-26 Marauder, a medium bomber known for its speed and maneuverability, they were expected to handle its powerful engines and complex systems. The AT-6 Texan, a primary advanced trainer, required precision in its control, and the WASPs became adept at its handling, enabling them to prepare male pilots for combat. The ferrying missions were particularly challenging. Imagine flying a new B-24 Liberator bomber, a massive aircraft with a wingspan of over 110 feet, from the Willow Run factory in Michigan to a base in Arizona. This required meticulous planning, navigation across vast distances, and a constant awareness of weather patterns. The WASPs had to be proficient in calculating fuel consumption, understanding radio communication protocols, and making critical decisions in potentially hazardous situations. The absence of modern navigation aids meant relying on maps, compasses, and celestial navigation. The responsibility of delivering these expensive and vital aircraft safely was immense. Each successful ferry flight was a small but significant victory in the overall war effort. The target towing missions were perhaps the most dangerous in terms of direct risk. The WASPs would fly their aircraft, often light trainers or medium bombers, with a long-sleeve target trailing behind them. They would then fly specific patterns at designated ranges, allowing gunnery students to practice firing live ammunition. The proximity of other aircraft, the need for precise maneuvering, and the ever-present danger of accidental hits from the trainees created an atmosphere of constant vigilance. The WASPs flew these missions with remarkable courage and professionalism, understanding that their role was critical for developing the skills of the fighter pilots who would face the enemy. The statistics of these missions are staggering. WASPs flew thousands of hours towing targets, contributing directly to the combat readiness of thousands of pilots. Beyond these more visible roles, WASPs also served in other capacities. They conducted aerial photography missions, capturing images of potential targets and troop movements. They flew courier missions, transporting sensitive documents and personnel between bases. They even participated in experimental programs, testing new aircraft modifications and equipment. Each of these roles, though perhaps less glamorous than combat flying, was vital to the efficient operation of the Army Air Forces. They were the unseen backbone of the aerial war effort, the individuals who kept the machines of war functioning, and the personnel moving where they needed to be. The impact of the WASPs cannot be overstated. By freeing up thousands of male pilots from non-combat duties, they allowed the Army Air Forces to deploy more experienced aviators to overseas combat zones. This direct reallocation of personnel had a tangible effect on the war's progress. It is estimated that WASPs flew over 60 million miles during their service, ferrying more than 12,000 aircraft. They flew 77 different types of aircraft, demonstrating an astonishing versatility and adaptability. Their contribution was not measured in enemy aircraft shot down, but in the silent, steady hum of engines across American skies, a sound that represented the relentless march of progress and the unwavering commitment of a nation at war. The disbandment of the WASPs in December 1944 was a stark reminder of the societal norms of the era, despite their proven capabilities and their critical contributions, they were deemed no longer necessary as the war effort shifted focus. The lack of military status meant they did not receive the same honors or benefits as their male counterparts. This oversight would haunt many of the WASPs for decades, as they recounted their stories and sought recognition for their service. The fight for their rightful place in history was a long and arduous one, a testament to their enduring spirit. The journey towards recognition was a slow but determined one. In the intervening years, efforts were made by WASP organizations and individual members to bring their story to the forefront. They meticulously documented their experiences, collected photographs, and shared their oral histories. These efforts were crucial in building the case for official recognition. The passage of time, while bringing the harsh realities of war further into the past, also allowed for a more objective appraisal of the contributions made by all individuals, regardless of gender. The granting of veteran status in 1977 was a pivotal moment. It was a recognition by the United States government that the WASPs had indeed served their country during a time of great need. This meant that they were now eligible for veteran benefits, which included healthcare and educational opportunities through the GI Bill. It was a tangible acknowledgement of their sacrifice and their commitment. The Congressional Gold Medal, awarded in 2009, was another significant milestone. It represented a national embrace of their story and an understanding of their profound impact. The ceremony itself was a powerful testament to their resilience and the enduring importance of their service. Many of the surviving WASPs, some in their 90s, were present to receive this ultimate honor. Their faces a roadmap of courage and dedication. The medal, a symbol of valor and national gratitude, finally placed them in the pantheon of American heroes. The story of the Women Air Force Service pilots is a vital chapter in the history of aviation and of World War II. It is a story that speaks to the capabilities of women, the ingenuity of military necessity, and the often unseen efforts that underpin even the most monumental historical events. They were pioneers, breaking down barriers and demonstrating that women could excel in fields previously dominated by men. Their legacy is one of unwavering patriotism, exceptional skill, and a quiet determination that ultimately reshaped perceptions and paved the way for future generations of women in aviation and in all sectors of society. The detailed accounts of their training, their missions, and their struggles for recognition offer a rich and detailed tapestry, woven with threads of courage, perseverance, and a profound dedication to service. Their history, though once obscured, now stands as a luminous example of the vital contributions made by those who served, both seen and unseen, during a time of global conflict. Their impact resonates still, a quiet testament to the power of ordinary individuals stepping up to extraordinary challenges, their stories continuing to inspire and inform, a soothing reminder of the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity.